Another person whom they tried to poison was the ex-president Eduardo Frei.
Old childish idea that most of diplomats are spies. Okay, we start. First of all, Mr. Brotherus, I'm happy to see you. Not because you're a legend of the world diplomacy and you saved thousands of people, but because I watched the movie and seeing the hero is just a rather interesting experience, a very strange one. And so the first question is, do you really have something in common with Pelle Heikkilä, who is playing your role, and do you find any similarity between you and him?
I think rather few similarities. I met him only after they had made the movie.
Only after, really?
Yes, they have forbidden him to take contact with me before, so that I shouldn't have influenced him. I don't know how I could have influenced him, but anyway, he was in the movie, as you have noticed, he is a heavy smoker, and I never smoked in my life. And he said the same was with him, but he was forced to smoke because the director of the movie said so, and he got pneumonia in Santiago in the middle of the winter there when smoking non-stop because I was supposedly a smoker.
First of all, what can you say about Allende as politician? You know that he could arrest Pinochet, and maybe in this way Chile wouldn't pay millions of lives. He gave not only his life, but some of Chilean socialists also died because he wanted to be pure. Why didn't he take him? How can you explain that he couldn't defend somehow his personal power?
Well, I think it was simply the thing that he didn't let his supporter be armed. So he believed in a kind of parliamentary democracy, and he wanted to have his ideas developed, realized through the political negotiations and not through force. And many of his close ones in the Socialist Party insisted that he should have armed the people, but I don't think that was even a realistic idea because the army in Chile had such a strong position and the monopoly of arms in practice. So it was for him an option which was not available.
Well, you know that Allende was rather popular, winning the elections. What happened to his popularity? In 2 years, he practically lost all the percents of his voters.
No, he did not. I think he had the majority until the end because they had these regional elections in 73 and he had the majority absolutely. The Christian Democrats were the ones in the middle who could not decide whether to support him or not, and they turned their shoulder against him, which they regretted afterwards. But his weak points was the lack of the grim realities. I mean, the kind of reality that you should not have your friends far away and your enemies close.
Well, we know that Allende was named a socialist. What do you think about his policy and about his politics and his views? What about his economy? Because there is a common opinion that Pinochet saved Chilean economy. It's rather strange to hear because the value of this action was too high.
Indeed, the Chilean economy did not suffer because of Allende, but because of the United States of America, which put an embargo on Chile, and that is why it succumbed.
But they took it away after the putsch. They supported Pinochet and took away the embargo, yeah?
Yeah, well, the embargo miraculously disappeared when Pinochet had the power, and they took this idea of the free market where everything and everybody was measured in the value of money.
We know that there is a common opinion also that diplomats couldn't intervene the inner policy of the country. But you intervened and you saved many people. Why, for example, Soviet diplomats or American diplomats couldn't save all those dissidents in Chile? Why they were practically ignorant about the situation?
Well, the Americans certainly were supporting wholeheartedly the military takeover. The Soviet Union broke diplomatic relations with Chile, like the socialist camp in toto, with the exception of China and Romania. They were the only ones who stayed there after the coup.
Well, maybe it was better not to break diplomatic relations, but to save people.
Yes, indeed, I think so too, and that is the diplomatic relations can be used also for other things than support a dictatorial regime, and to come in with the impulses and dialogue with people who think otherwise there, without meddling too much into the internal affairs of the given country, naturally.
Наша цель – сохранять нейтралитет. Мы хотим, чтобы другие страны относились ко внутренним делам Чили соответствующе.
Прошу прощения, а почему страну покинули советские послы? Скажите, пожалуйста.
Этот вопрос не относится к теме пресс-конференции. Это все.
What can you say about Pinochet personally? You knew him, you saw him many times, you also knew Allende. Try to compare them. There is also an opinion in Russia that Pinochet was disgusting, but many people say that he was a good politician, a true democrat, and not a typical general. What can you say about his manners, about his views, about him personally?
Well, I didn't know him personally, but what one could see was that he was a very rough guy. He wanted to carry through his message as if he would have been empowered by the people. And then he made a mistake at a given moment during the dictatorship that he thought that the people could support him in free elections. And that is where he was ousted, because he lost that election.
Well, the percentage was comparable. He got 45%, so it's not a very small percentage, I should say. He was supported still, but 55% didn't want him.
Как министр вы справились блестяще.
Спасибо, адмирал.
Никто в такой сложной ситуации не справился бы лучше. Но теперь нам нужен новый министр. Смена стратегии, как вы говорите. Ваше лицо у многих связано с насилием первых месяцев правления.
Что-то не так с моим лицом?
Нет. Мы готовим экономические реформы. Главнокомандующего Пиночета в скором времени назначат президентом. Все только начинается, Исмаэль.
Well, the Chileans were very much afraid of that Chile would be turned into a new Cuba. And,
yeah, exactly.
And Allende certainly was not a fan of Cuba. He visited Cuba many times, and the Cubans wanted to give him a hand, but he knew that it was a very costly business if he would have been in closer contacts with the Cubans. And he didn't, they were too tropical in his view. For a Chilean, anything up there which is tropical is, in their view, a little bit dubious.
What can you say about the further fate of Harold Edelstam, who is the legend in Latin America and South America generally? He's rather popular because he is one of the heroes of the story. What can you say about his further life?
Well, he was popular, more popular in Chile, in the opposition and in Latin America in general, than in the Swedish Foreign Ministry, because at the time when he was urging people around the world in the universities in the United States to support policies condemning this military dictatorship, he was stepping on the toes of Prime Minister Palme, who wanted to improve his relations with the Americans, which had gone very sour after the Vietnam War criticism of Sweden. And so Edelstam was not useful then anymore. He was sent to Algeria as ambassador, and there certainly his ideas could not float very freely around. But one thing I would like to add, I had a very high regard for him. He was a very nice guy. But thanks to him, I could operate more undisturbed because he wanted to have all the media's attention on him. And there were always journalists around him, whatever he did.
Я могу отправить сообщение в Финляндию через шведов.
Скоро комендантский час.
Бротherus? В чем дело? Что с посольством? Никто не пострадал?
Нет, только материальный ущерб. Зачем вам вооруженная охрана?
Демократия под угрозой.
Мне нужно послать сообщение в Финляндию, а у вас есть радиотелекс.
Мне надо связаться с Пальме.
Электричества нет.
У нас есть генератор. Пошли.
Спасибо.
And in that film, there is a major mistake. It is called Invisible Heroes or whatever. Invisible, yes.
Invisible Heroes.
And that was the idea that one could do things when one was not too visible. The visibility was Harald Edelstam. And I never went to Neruda's funeral together with Edelstam. I was there hanging around in the rear troops. His colleague from the Swedish embassy was the guy on his side when they marched there, if you remember in the movie.
Yeah, sure.
Together hand in hand. And that is somehow those who did this film here in Finland wanted me to be a kind of a disciple of Edelstam, which I was not. I think that his example, I knew that it could not work there.
Well, the problem is, not in the movie but in the book, that you were not supported by some officials in your country. Some of them disapproved your activities because you should be more neutral. Is it true?
Well, I don't think they mixed. Finland was too far away. Chile was too
fine, exactly, yeah. They couldn't control you.
And there was the European Security Conference being prepared in Helsinki, and the foreign ministry was running this mega idea, and they were very busy with it. So whatever happened in the little embassy of little Finland, thousands of miles away, you couldn't care less. But I would say that they came in with one good idea, and that was that you could take into asylum people for political reasons if their lives were threatened on the spot, and that new that change in our program of the foreign ministry's orders was introduced at the end of 1973 by Keijo Korhonen, who was the correspondent civil servant in the foreign ministry, and so they could not challenge me in courts or anything after that. So actually, they saved me from that trouble. I thought that I couldn't care less if they want to kick me out. So be it. One was 7 years, and the one was rather not too worried about one's personal future.
Now, this is my personal private question. Do you still believe that after such a total crisis, which we have now in Western world, socialist idea has any chances again? Do you still believe in some of socialist ideas, not only in economy, but in social politics and so on?
I think in Chile, at least, you could see it what happened last autumn there, when they raised the tariffs of the underground trains with a very small percentage, seen from the political decision makers' point of view. It was a minor amount, but it raised a huge protest among the people. And I think they have not stopped yet. I think they are still working on to reverse the economic policies of that country.
Do you know anything exact, anything concrete about the circumstances of Allende's death? You know, there are many versions, but still there are no witnesses of his last minutes.
Well, I have no more specific ideas about it. No, I think he's a person who he's a rather. His glory would suffer from a suicide naturally, but that is, if it was a suicide, it was a glorious suicide.
Well, I can't believe it was suicide. I think he was hoped, he could have hope, he was given hope by some other diplomats or maybe some of his alliances that he would be saved. I'm quite sure he couldn't commit suicide. He wasn't just such a person who could acknowledge his loss.
Well, I think he was a target of the military around, so he could have actually been shot by them.
He was killed, surely, yeah. She was surely shot, yeah. And by the way, you were a good friend of Neruda. The circumstances of his death are also mysterious. What happened to him? I heard that he was poisoned.
Well, I think they are still studying these things. Neruda, I think, was certainly a person whom the junta wanted to make disappear very happily, so they had the motive. Another person whom they tried to poison was the ex-president Eduardo Frei. That is still going on. Also, the process to prove that he was poisoned in the hospital in the 1980s, and the junta was very keen of eliminating its enemies, which even to the degree that the former foreign minister of Chile was killed in the center of Washington D.C. by a bomb. So I mean they were chasing them all around.
Господин министр, Tapani Brotherus. Это посол Теслов. Он приехал в Чили подписать соглашение о сотрудничестве между нашими странами. Рад встрече.
Взаимно.
Well, what about of Neruda, by the way? He looked such an ordinary man, such fat and even boring sometimes. Could you see that he is a great poet? There was something in common with traditional poets in his manners, in his views, and so on. Because, we all have the romantic image of poet, and Neruda is a typical ordinary man.
Well, he had a diplomatic background, didn't he?
Yeah, sure.
So, being a consul in Indonesia and so on, so I think made him look maybe less than a poet.
Yeah, maybe too ordinary, yeah. Like an official.
Yes.
Do you think the Soviet Union could intervene somehow and save Allende?
Could the Soviet Union
Could intervene and save Allende, maybe by military force, maybe some other way.
Yeah, there was a plan which the Politburo didn't accept because it was too flashy to go down to Dawson Island with the helicopter and pick the guys up from there. I think it had obvious risks. The Soviet Union left only one person there in Santiago at the embassy. He was a caretaker of the premises, the buildings the state owned there. And he was rather bored, so I once invited him to a fishing tour together with some Americans. And I think both parties knew each other from their intelligence contacts.
Прекрасно. Получилось. Превосходно.
Сними-ка нас.
Держу.
Еще раз.
And we were close to Santiago and fishing up in the mountains there. And we had a Primus stove which we were heating for to cook the fish we got there. And somehow it exploded there, this bloody Primus stove, which was a second hand. It was we Finns had bought it. And the tent burnt down, and the Americans said that it was a Finnish complot against them, but it was the Swedish complot in a way, rather.
Well, the atmosphere of movie and of book also is horrifying. But do you recall these times with a kind of nostalgia, or was it really so terrible not to mention it at all?
Well, we had our good moments there. Naturally, it is the East Germans, and we had a rather reasonably good relationship there, and Chile is a country which is very pleasant to stay in, but with the political situation, it became rather let's say rather tough to stay there in the long run. So we have happy memories, and I have cherished them. I have been from time to time in contact with one of the East German guys who lives in Berlin, and me and my colleague here, we are remembering the times there. I don't want to start a monologue on this side part anymore, but anyway, it was a good time.
It was great time, sure.
Yeah, well, I didn't think that we had done something special there. It came about only now, many years later, almost 50 years later, they discovered what had happened. And that was why this movie, even I think it's a rather mediocre one, was a success here in Finland, because they had no idea that something like that had been done.
Well, sorry for this question, but I know that most of diplomats are informed much better than the natives. Maybe that's my old childish idea that most of diplomats are spies. So, could you even suppose this overturn? Could you even suppose the events of September of 1973? Because you surely were informed better than most of simple, ordinary Chileans.
No, I didn't. It came to a total surprise. We were engaged in a project of cooperation with Chileans in the sectors of forestry and copper mining. and I thought that this basis could carry quite far, both for the benefit of Chile and for little Finland too. And I had. Well, you have to think that our embassy, we were 3 people who were sent from Finland, so we didn't have resources to go and sniff around what was going to happen. But 3 days before the coup, actually, we had a visit from one of their military person who then told that something will happen in 2 more days. He was a member of the riding club there, and he came to a party at our place, and he was one of the edecans of the junta, later junta member of the police forces. So I had no idea. I even wrote a report to Finland 1 month before the coup d'etat that there might be a coup d'etat coming, and that would be by the military to strengthen the position of Allende, which was a really ridiculous but anyway, that is my naivety was there at its blossom.
My also. I believed he could be saved by all those people. By the way, was there any personal risk for you and your wife? Because in the movie you are just in personal danger.
А ну иди сюда!
О, черт! Он его застрелил. Нет!
Well, I don't know. I was I didn't, as I said, I didn't expose myself as Ambassador Edestam, who was a classical gallant diplomat. Looking from far away, you could see that he was an important person. For me and Finland was not known at all in Chile. It was mixed with countries like Finlandia, Thailandia, and even Philadelphia. So we could operate quite freely with the refugees to start with, before they realized that there was a country which name was Finland and that they were interested in taking these refugees. And we were given permission then to take them and shuffle them to the East German side then without any problems.
What do you think about Soviet part in the events in Latin America? Do you think Soviet role was positive and Soviet influence was big in Latin America? Because socialist ideas were supported by one country, and we all know this country.
Well, in the overall balance, I think the Soviet Union's presence in Cuba was the thermometer of those relationships.
Exactly.
And further than that, one couldn't go there. So there was no possibilities of making a penetration on the continental side of South America.
Well, you know, such a philosopher and also socialist, Slavoj Žižek, said, world was a better place when we had Soviet Union. What can you say about it?
Well, I have Zizek here, so I can check.
Yeah, sure. What a wonderful book, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. What can you say about this?
Well, I think it would be to simplify things a little bit. I think we miss Russia in the European context. I think the rest of the world, that is for the Trotskyism, and that is passé.
Sure.
And by the way, did you know that the first political refugees who came to Finland were not the Chileans? Before of that, in 1921, the rebellion in Kronstadt came over, chased by Trotsky, and they came to Finland, and they formed the first asylum seekers.
Well, by the way, such a strange question, but I know this information from some Chileans. You know that some Nazi criminals were hiding in Latin America, and by the way, concretely in Chile. Do you think they were consulting Pinochet during this overturn?
Might be, yes. I wouldn't be surprised if, no, I wouldn't be surprised.
What was your further fate just after the movie? What happened to you in 1974? When did you leave Santiago, and have you been there from that time?
We left Santiago in 70, was it 6 or 7? And I came to Finland, and after that, nobody is interested where have you been and what you have done. So I thought, okay, this being it, I have to adjust myself to the realities here. And we went to Oslo. I was to a lower position, to the embassy there, and we had a wonderful 4 years skiing holiday there. So I was, and then some years passed, and I forgot the whole bloody thing. I was posted in Tehran, in South Africa, and final posting was in Greece. But I didn't go and wave the Allende flag around there anymore. So now, when this movie came about and the book, I have had to search my memory of all these things. I kept no journal of it. I have had to verify many facts, and it has kept me busy for 1 year here. So maybe that has helped me to not to succumb to Alzheimer's so quickly as I would otherwise.
By the way, my son was always dreaming to be a diplomat, but I told him he would also be dependent on some power, and it's better to be some independent artist, and he became an actor. Can you say what profession would you prefer, and do you still like your first election to become a diplomat? Is it a dangerous thing? Is it a depending thing? Is it some harmful thing sometimes? What can you say about this profession? Do you have maybe some story about your first wish to become Chilean diplomat?
Well, I was, before joining the foreign ministry, I was in Bolivia in a literacy campaign, and I partly joined the foreign ministry because I wanted to go as long as possible, as far away as possible from the headquarters, so one could do things which were not under the close observation of one's bosses. And that has been my credo all the time. So naturally, if you are very ambitious and talented, then you go to important places like the European Union, like Stockholm, Moscow, whatever. There are also other ways to find one's niche in the diplomatic system, and that's what I have done. Maybe my talents would have not reached me any longer, but this was a very natural selection from my part, at least. And I think I would do it again if I could.
The very last question from me personally. During all my youth, I was the hot supporter, the real fan of Che Guevara. What can you say about him? Because some of our politicians now say that he was a hangman, that he was an executor, that he was a Trotskyist, and anything you want. All the negative ideas about him. Do you think he was a hero, a visible hero?
Well, he is a person from the world of fantasies. I was in New York when he was caught. When he was caught in Bolivia in the jungles there and executed. Naturally, he left for a young person to dream of him as a hero is not unnatural, but I think his place should have been in the world for many hundreds of years ago. Then it would have been better understood.
Well, maybe you will be pleased to know that on 11th of May, at 8 o'clock on European time, we'll have the first look of the movie in Russia on Shot TV, and millions of ex-Soviet and now Russian people will watch your adventures. It happens at 11th of May, and so you become a visible hero for the ex-Soviets just in the middle of May. I think it's a rather strange feeling to become a hero for such a new audience, because most of them are practically ignorant about your part in those events. But on 11th of May they will see you in your best age, in your best times. Thanks to Shot TV for the organization of this talk. Best wishes for you. I was happy to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.